Okay, in our last video we started outlining a raster image, or an image made up of a grid of pixels, with vector graphics, which are essentially abstractions of math equations. And the first method that I'm taking is to go all the way around the perimeter of my image, in this case a skull, with these single clicks, which are corner points. They have no curve information. And then I return to them after the fact and use the convert point tool, or in Illustrator it would be called the anchor point tool. And we can use that to impart curve information or to take curve information away if it comes down to that. So let's just go through some more of the basics here. If I approach a path that's already been started but has an open anchor point, I'll get a little subgraphic on my pen. You'll see it looks like a slash, and that tells me I can carry on with an existing path. So I'll come down through here. You may be wondering, well, what happens if I don't add enough anchors? And that might inspire you to do a million little clicks on your way around the surface. And the answer is, don't worry, of course there's a way to add additional paths in the future. Now there I go around, and I'm looking to close the path, and you can see I have a little circle as the subgraphic for my pen, so that's good. We like to work with closed paths because it makes it easier later to do things like the pathfinder. So always close paths if you can help it. Okay, now I'll switch back to my anchor point tool. And we're really just going to go through here and impart this curve information. You can see in some cases, as I add curve information, it's going to screw up the work I did before, because each of these line segments that travels between two anchor points is influenced by two different tangency handles. So if I click on this segment right here, I can see this half of the tangency handle has an influence, and this half has an influence as well, and that's problematic. While I'm at it, I'm also going to change this color to something a little different, because that way I can see, right now this layer is red, and that was not a distinct color from my red stroke. So that'll make things a little easier. Okay, so I'm not going to worry so much about the details as I go. Let's go through here and just add curvature information to everything. In some cases it'll be quite short. And I also want to, if possible, remember the order in which I was making the points, because if I go in the opposite direction, you can see I'll be sort of doubling over the line if I'm not careful. So the directionality does make a difference. In some cases, it's just such a subtle, whoops, I did it wrong there. Such a subtle little curve. And here I'm constantly hitting undo because the program is quite finicky about whether or not your mouse is exactly on that anchor point when it's making the decision whether or not to accept the command. So I'm constantly going to be making mistakes and then having to repair them. The other thing to think about is, as we're converting this graphic into 100% vector graphics, right, or sort of the opposite of raster graphics, or the thing you'd capture with the camera, ultimately I'm not going to be able to see any of the original image when I'm done. And part of what that means is that if my line is slightly off from the photographic image, I mean, listen, we're not doing science here. We're trying to make something that looks right. So if you make a line and you feel like the poetry of the line requires that it be slightly different from the original source material, as long as it looks good and correct later, then by all means go for it. I think right here, it'll probably be a big benefit visually to picking up that extra little nub on the bottom of the orbit or the top of the jawline, or whatever you'd call that. Whereas over here, I really like the smoothness of this arc ending in that corner. So I'm actually going to leave that corner alone. I'm not going to give that any curve information. And certainly, like that, for example, as well, looks like a little piece where we tuck in. If you give something curve information and you don't like it, you can always just do a single click again, and that erases all of the associated tangent handles. Okay, so we're almost done, making sure that we never double over. And then now we have an opportunity to come through and refine this thing and edit it back down, which we'll do in the next video.